The following sermon was delivered at the 10:30 worship service at the United Methodist Church of Kent. Please enjoy.
A parable is a simple story, just a sentence or two at times. And yet through the simplicity of a parable, because of their simplicity, parables invite us to wonder about essential things. Things like our place and role in God's creation, or our relationships with God and with our neighbors, or how we can grow together into beloved community. The word parable is a combined Greek word meaning literally throwing or tossing alongside. Jesus told lots of these little stories, tossing them alongside the rest of his ministry and along the lives of those who gathered around him. Each parable is an open narrative, escaping any single interpretation and instead inviting our participation, our attention and engagement, what we might call our active listening. Just before today's two parables, at the end of Luke chapter 14, Jesus says to us, "Whoever has ears to hear should pay attention." And as we do so, as we attend Jesus' words, we may find that each of us receives the story, the parable, a little differently. Even that the same story can leave a different impression on us at different times in our lives. Parables invite us into something more collaborative than just hearing and repeating. They invite us into relationship. They invite us to wonder, where am I in this story? How is it speaking to me today? How is it challenging me? What is it calling forth in me? What new understanding or action or other response? In today's gospel, we're given the first two in a set of three parables, each related and yet distinct. In many translations of our Bibles, the two we heard today may be given titles like the parable of the lost sheep and the parable of the lost coin. Now, notably, neither Jesus nor the writer of the gospel gave us these headings, and yet if we think about these stories in that way, according to those headings, that tends to lead our wondering in a specific direction. For some of us, perhaps that's how we learned these stories, as allegories, making clear connections between details in the stories and people in the world. For example, the lost sheep and the lost coin stand in for supposedly lost people who have gone astray, who have wandered off and need somehow to be found. To some degree, that's how the writer of the gospel seems to want us to hear these stories, as being about repentant sinners, folks who have turned their lives around, who have changed their hearts and lives and found their way back to God. But there are, I think, at least a couple of problems with that typical interpretation. For one, God doesn't lose us. No matter how far we may wander, no matter what we might do or what is done to us, we cannot ever outdistance God's love. Now, I'm going to say that again this morning, especially now in this moment of escalating political hatred and violence, in this near ubiquity of us versus them thinking and talking, this ideology that tears us apart. No matter how far apart we might think that we are from one another, no matter what folks say about us or how greatly we think we disagree with one another, no matter what, no one can ever outdistance God's love. We may not always be aware of it. We may, in fact, often be unaware of it. And yet God's reach is too broad. God's grace is too deep for any of us ever to be lost from God. And second, the second problem I have with this typical interpretation is that neither sheep nor coins, at least so far as I'm aware of it, neither one are capable of repenting or changing their hearts and lives. A coin can't do much except stay where it's been put. And while a sheep might eventually wander its way back to the flock, that's not even what happens in Jesus' story. And so while the writer of Luke's gospel tries to summarize these stories for us as being about sinners who repent, sinners who turn their lives around, neither the sheep nor the coin changes anything at all. They are simply found. In fact, all of the activity is on the part of the one who is searching and seeking and finding and celebrating. And all of that activity begins with noticing in the first place that something is missing, which is in itself a pretty remarkable thing. Now, I don't own any sheep, but I doubt that even the most experienced of sheep owners at a glance would be able to tell without counting that 1 out of 100 has gone missing. Even with coins at a glance, I wouldn't know whether there were 10 or 9 of them without counting them. And so there's something very deliberate about both the sheep owner and the woman in Jesus' stories. They count the sheep. They count the coins. That's how they notice that one is missing. Suppose someone among you had 100 sheep and lost one, Jesus says, inviting us to imagine ourselves in these stories not as any of the sheep or the coins, but as the one who counts, the one who notices and then seeks and searches until each and every one is found. And when each is found, whether sheep or coins, it's brought back into the fold, into the flock, into the coin collection. And then, when the community has been restored, the one who did the counting, the noticing, the seeking, the searching, and finding, immediately invites all their neighbors to rejoice together. I always imagine at least some of those neighbors who received that invitation wondering, what's the big deal? It's just 1 sheep. You had 99 others. It's just 1 out of 10 coins. 1 sheep makes a difference. Every coin has value, the shepherd or the woman, I imagine, responding. For without that 1, something is missing. Only with it is my flock, my coin collection, complete. And only when the whole community is then gathered together, not just the shepherd, not just the woman, but all their friends and neighbors, does the celebration begin. For our joy is not private. Our joy is not individual. Joy is only joy when it's shared. There is, of course, much to be said for having what we might call an abundance mindset, focusing on what we have, the place where we are, the people who are here with us, and practicing gratitude for our many blessings. It's an important part of faithful stewardship. And yet today's parables invite us to consider this other part of stewardship too, to consider how it is that we are caring for the health of the whole community by focusing on the ones we tend to ignore. Suppose someone among you had 100 sheep and lost one. Wouldn't you leave the other 99 and search for the one until you found it? And what woman, Jesus says, if she owns 10 silver coins and loses one, won't light a lamp and sweep the house, searching her home carefully until she finds it? It's so interesting, I think, that Jesus presumes in telling these parables. Jesus presumes that we would, of course, leave the 9 coins, leave the 99 sheep in order to go seek and search for the one that's missing, and keep seeking, keep searching until we find it. But would we? Would we really? Do we? Sometimes our abundance mindset leads us to thinking that we should just leave well enough alone. Why risk losing the 99 or the 9 while we're out looking for the one? Yet today, Jesus gives us a very different message, emphasizing that every single one is essential. It's not enough to have a flock of 99 or a coin collection of 9. Where is the one that's missing, Jesus asks. Go out and find them. For so long as anyone is missing, none of us is complete. And so, like the shepherd, like the woman, our faithful work begins in noticing. It begins in expanding and sharpening our peripheral vision. Who or what is missing? Whom have we ignored either by chance or by choice? Whose voice have we not heard? Who is present in our neighborhood somewhere, but we don't notice them and they don't have a seat at the table where decisions are being made? Perhaps one application of these parables I might suggest today is in our original and our ongoing call to care for creation. For many years now, we've been well aware that we're living in what what experts call a mass extinction event, a staggering loss of species, both plants and animals, terrestrial and marine, due to habitat destruction and pollution and climate change and other human-caused harms. And yet amid so much loss, we can be mostly unaware, either ignorant or numb to the disappearance of so many of God's sacred creatures. How might Jesus' parables today challenge us to respond in a different way, to give attention, to count, to notice, to care for the whole flock, all creation, not just the ones who might profit us somehow, but the many who are living now on the edge? And how might these parables challenge us in other ways too, to broaden our listening, to notice neighbors we have not seen, to amplify voices we have silenced, to hear perspectives that are different from our own? Consistently, all throughout his ministry, Jesus challenged those who held traditional forms of power and clarified God's invitation, especially for those who had been pushed aside. Even before his birth, his mother prophesied it. God's favor for those pressed low, filling the hungry with good things, sending the rich away empty-handed. From the very beginning of his ministry, Jesus proclaimed it: good news to the impoverished, release to the prisoners, liberation for the oppressed, and reparations through the fulfillment of Jubilee. Now, in these parables, Jesus illustrates it, that including each of our neighbors begins not in the center, not at the top, but in solidarity with those living on the edge. How might that shift in our perspective from the center to the periphery, from the loud to the quiet, from the powerful to the exploited? How might that deliberate, noticing, seeking, searching, and finding help to shape our ministry as a congregation moving forward? And as we make that shift, how might we then experience and share joy with our whole community? Significantly, that's where both parables end, in this communal joy and celebration. When we don't seek and search, maybe don't even notice that anyone is missing, we miss out on the chance of rejoicing with them. When we focus only on those who make the most noise, who get the most clicks, on the preferences of those already holding power, we deprive ourselves and the whole community of the opportunity to rejoice together. These days, unfortunately, joy can feel hard to come by. And so the rejoicing we're invited into takes on even greater significance. Our rejoicing together is a form of resistance, a form of praise, and a living prayer. There is joy both in finding and in being found, and it doesn't belong to us alone, but to our whole community. So may we receive again these well-loved parables, tossed by grace into our lives today. And as we do so, may we notice what has been lost. May we notice who is missing. And then, by grace, may we seek and search and find and rejoice, all together in the love of God, whose grace is seeking us and all now. Thanks be to God. Amen.
Thank you for listening to this edition of the United Methodist Church of Kent Sermon Podcast. For more information about the church, visit www.kentmethodist.org.